Hello, friends. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the third episode of Game Changers of India. These are placements that Executive Access has done over the years, which are close to heart. And in this episode, we talk to people who have moved the needle and made a difference to learn from them as to what has really contributed to their success. And hopefully, we can take some learning from there. Friends, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Rajeev Chopra, who was the country head of Philips in India and had a lot of global roles working in four geographies. We placed him in 2003 as senior director of Philips in India, and 8 years in Philips, he was made the country head, which to my mind possibly is one of the fastest rise of anyone making it to the corner room so fast. Let us try and learn as to what really contributed to this success. Incidentally, friends, while Rajiv was the country head of Philips in India, Philips has over 150 subsidiaries. To get to the top five was an achievement and, in fact, something that we all would be very proud of. Rajiv had the pleasure of working and overseeing business in over 100 countries worldwide. So let us peep into the mind of Rajiv. Let's try and learn from him. And let's try and see what really has made him to what he is today. Rajiv, when you look back at your career, what has really shaped you as a human being and a professional that has stood by you and paid you good dividends?
Hi, Ronesh. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. So, I think the most important thing for me in my career has actually been the people I've worked with. I've tried to learn from each and every one of them. And this is not just a cliched statement I'm making. I mean, there are some people who made a fairly profound difference to me. Some things from them I sort of tried to copy the way they did things. Some things, okay, I took it, I adapted it to myself. I think a person who really comes to mind is he used to oversee lighting in Asia at that stage. It's a Dutch person, a gentleman, Ad Skivers. He's retired now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Ad is someone who made a huge difference, and I'd sort of take the opportunity of try to learn from him whenever I met him, which would be, I don't know, maybe every 3 months or so, right from the time I was senior director. I think that played a role. Art is just one of them. There were others in other stages of my career as well.
So you came from a very different environment, having worked with HP, Cisco, and Microsoft. I mean, a European multinational is very different. So, for anyone joining a European multinational, what are some of the do's and don'ts, Rajiv, that you would recommend?
So it's not joining only a European multinational or whatever. Actually, let me just take a stage back because you touched upon something which, in a way, I'm proud of. I started off with fast moving consumer goods. Then I moved into IT with three of the best, which is Hewlett Packard, then Microsoft, then Cisco.
Yes.
Then I moved into Philips in lighting. Then I moved into, Philips India country head. In between, I had postings outside. And then I moved to heading a global business in Philips out of headquarters, retired from corporates, went into my own startup, divested that startup in 2000 and the end of 2022. And then I've been consulting with a couple of companies since. So it's not just, what's there in a European multinational. I think it's to do with every company. Every company has its own culture. Every company has its own way of doing things. I think the important thing for anyone is how do you fit into the company culture and then how do you go ahead and contribute in that culture without losing your individuality, without losing the reason why they've hired you in the first place. And I think for most executives or for most successful executives, that is something which would come natural provided you are sharp enough to pick up the cues when you need to pick up the cues and to work on those cues and like the point I'd made earlier, ask for feedback if you need to. So,
And which feedback do you prefer, the positive or the negative?
well, positive feedback is always nice, but the feedback which really helps you to improve is the you need to work on whatever XYZ. And I think most guys giving you feedback will start off with, the good things, then they'll put on to you what they want to put on, and then they'll finish off with the nice things.
Would you say that one of the prescriptions for success is to be hungry for criticism?
You have to be. You have to. You have to realize that you got to actually realize three or four things. Number one, whichever position you're in, and whatever the size of your team, you don't necessarily know everything. There are people who would be in a position to know certain things better than you. You got to be in a position to understand from them and realize that that's a fairly valid point of view. Then you've also got to realize that there are certain gaps in your own experience, in your own knowledge base, and you've got to be in a position to close that gap by learning from other people. So, yeah, it's critical, I would say.
What should be the mental makeup of a person who aspires to be successful in a corporate world?
You got to be humble. And again, some of these, I'm not making them in a cliched manner. You got to be humble. You got to realize what you're good at. And as important, you got to realize what you're not so good at so that you can, get other members of your team to sort of fill this up. So let's just do some personal examples. I personally believe I'm very, very good at the big picture. I'm very good at, or at least that's what I would assume that I became over the years. I'm fairly good at, anticipating how things are. I'm pretty good with customers and listening to them and the gaps, etc., etc. What I was not so good at was the absolute fine point nitty gritties on details. So I'm detailed enough. But, if you're talking about really fine point nitty gritties on details, yeah, well,
At Bose.
yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
look, it's a gap.
Mm.
So what I did was pretty early is as parts of my team, I had people who would actually help me cover up those gaps.
Right.
And I wasn't scared to ask them.
Mm.
So I'd tell them, so there's this one gentleman who I worked with for a very long period.
Mm.
So I used to tell him, I said, listen,
Mm.
you are good at this.
Mm.
I'm not so good at this. So
Mm.
would you mind, just covering up for me a little on this one?
Mm.
And things like this helped.
So one of the keys becomes that you get a team that really helps you become successful.
You get a team which complements each other. In this case, complements each other also means complements me. And between them, the team has the required skills to do whatever it takes.
Companies are as good as the people that they hire. When you are hiring, what are one or two things that you really look at, and what are one or two
Big-
things which are the don'ts?
Well, I wrote a paper and then I gave a speech at one of the Indian Institutes of Management to their class. And there's a bunch of things about what I really look for in people. Of course, you look for the obvious, the person's got to do the job and things of that sort.
Mm.
But then there are a bunch of other things which you try and pick up
Mm.
either through ref checks, through interviews, if you know a person. So, for example, and let me just list them out. Is the person passionate about the company's mission, vision, what the company is, all about? If that person is, the person is likely to make a better employee than somebody who doesn't. So, I mean, let's just give you another example. If I hate cigarettes or if I hate alcohol, I should not be working for a liquor company.
True.
And that's a very top level thing, but it gets a little more nuanced than that.
Mm.
Okay, then is there a cultural fit between that person and the organization? You know the thing, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You
Correct.
don't have a cultural fit, forget about it. The person is not going to succeed no matter how good he or she is. Does the person have a strong customer orientation? I mean, you got to understand what your customers want.
Mm.
It's one thing to take your offering and just try and flog it. It's another thing to understand what the customer wants, take what you have and try and meet the customer's expectations and the their requirements. And in some cases, if you're not in a position to meet the requirements, I'd rather that the person goes to the customer and says, listen, I'm sorry, I can't do this.
Mm.
At least that way the trust remains between the customer and the person. Maybe you won't get this the business this time, but you would get it the next time. Will the person complement the capabilities I or the team possesses? Does the person have, what exactly does the person bring to the table? Okay. Can the person work well with others in the team? I think that's really critical. If the person can't work well with others in the team, constant friction, nobody's going to get anywhere. Okay. Can the person work without constant monitoring? Now, this is important for me. So, does the person require constant monitoring? If the person requires constant monitoring, then,
Mm.
at least my team's not the team for the person. Can the person see the big picture?
Mm.
So, yeah, we are all doing our jobs.
Mm.
But are you in a position to see beyond the job and where all this is leading to? Can you kind of see the big picture? And once you've got the North Star, can you figure out how everyone's role fits towards moving towards that
Mm.
North Star? I think that's important. High energy, of course. Results orientation to me is extremely important. Can the person take up occasional tasks outside their direct responsibility? It became really important, at least during the startup time, because you know how startups work, Ronesh. I mean,
Yeah.
different guys do different things all the time. Okay. The other thing which I believe in, there's this constant debate of talent experience, etc., etc. My own personal belief, and I think there's enough academic literature on this as well. Talent trumps experience. If you're talented, if you have the ability to learn, you will make up for the experience gaps in no time. But if you have the experience, but you don't necessarily have anything beyond, or you have little beyond that experience, you may not be able to cover up on some of the other things.
Have you gone outside the script? You have a job disk, you meet somebody who doesn't meet the job spec, but something in that person compels you to look at that person very closely and hire. Have you done that?
If there is a person who, for example, does not fit, but he or she has got some of the other things,
Right.
it is a person who I have personally kept,
Mm.
on standby, or when I say standby, at least in my mind.
In my experience, Rajiv, somehow, I don't know whether you agree or not, but I've seen cases where people are outside the script who are done phenomenally well. To be very candid, you were a bit outside the script in 2003 when we were doing the position. But something in you said that this guy has something that the others candidate don't. And you proved it. I mean, there. So I think sometimes maybe the unconventional and going outside also works very well. But the key is getting the right chemistry and the right hire in place. Anything which is a no-no for you. You see a person, you see meets the competencies, has the experience, been to the best of the B schools, whatever you want, and yet there is something in it says, no, not this guy.
So I'll tell you, and this has come up a number of times. I don't like people who are political. I mean, I like people who tell me things as is, and it's a what you see is what you get.
Right.
So I don't want people who telling me one thing, but doing something else or
Mm.
whatever. The other thing which I am dead against
Mm.
is somebody who does not have a moral compass and does not stick to the moral compass.
So you've seen a variety from a very structured multinational blue-blooded to doing a startup, two very, very different ecosystems. And I think your startup became the startup of the year by Frost and Sullivan in 2017-18. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So what would be your prescriptions for people wanting to do a startup? What are two, three things that they should do, and one or two, three things that you think should be a watch out?
So if you have to get into a startup, the first thing you got to do is you got to leave the ego aside. Let's get specific. You take the case of my own startup.
Mm.
The days when you were a CEO. And so my startup's in lighting. So let's just talk about examples in lighting. So the days when I was a CEO, if I ever had to, and by the way, as a CEO, I still spend a fair bit of my time going and meeting customers just to figure out how things were, how the company was doing, and more important, get nuanced feedback on how the industry, market, etc. is shaping up. The standard reason why you would, in the corner office, go and meet go and meet customers. You also have to realize that it's one thing to take a company from level A to level B. which is what the initial startup phase is. And it's another thing to take the company from level B to level C, which is what most corner office or what most seasoned executives would do. And it's a totally different set of skills from A to B.
Mm.
The other thing for a startup, I think the single most important metric is, of course, your offering and the impact it's making to your customers, but it's also about how you're managing your cash flow.
Right.
You got a certain amount of money, you don't want to spend it in 2 months, and that's the end of the story.
Right.
So my prescription would be leave your ego aside, realize that it's a totally different set of skills which build up a company initially. Sometimes a 20-year-old possesses those skills better than a seasoned executive. Try and figure that out, try and work onto it. No place for egos, just move on to that.
A lot of professionals aspire to be a CEO. What would be your prescription to get there?
You have to first deliver on results in whatever job you're doing.
Mm.
You have to be in a position to work well with the rest of the team. And you have to be in a position to really show that you understand the bigger picture, and you can actually do a bigger role. And it's important, of course, to prove it also.
What should professionals aspire to be to get success, and how could they prepare themselves? Should it be just a position, or should they be chasing something else?
So, Ronesh, this is a very interesting point you raise, and this is something which I realized a little later in my career. After one of the things as CEO I would do is the top talent in the company, I would ensure that I spend a fair bit of time with them.
Mm.
Do it over lunch, do it over just a coffee chat, do it, call a particular person over informally or formally, and, just have a chat. So one of the things I realized is success. How, Ronesh, would you define success? Look, we're not all born with the same skill sets, right? At birth,
True.
you're dealt with, at birth, you're handed over a certain set of cards.
Right.
Cards person A has might be different from the cards person B has. So how would you define success? And I would dare say that one way of defining success is, or actually, well, the 3 or 4 criteria. Number one, have you punched above your weight? If you've got a set of cards, has your output with those set of cards been far better than it would have been otherwise? Have you punched above your weight? Have you made a positive difference? Have you, are you going to be remembered for the right reasons? Have you ever compromised on your ethical, moral values? Have you had fun while doing it? I think if you can answer all of these, yes, you have been successful. Now, let's get to the next part of it, which is the corner office. Sure, you've been, you've ticked the box on all of this, and you aspire to get to the corner office. I think you have to show people that you are worthy of occupying that corner office. You've got to show people that you work well in the team. You got to show people that if you move up, your peers will not resent you for moving up. I mean, sometimes there's a little bit of professional jealousy. You got to make sure that you transcend all this. And the only way to do that is to demonstrate through work. I mean, try not to, for example, put people down.
Right.
And this is just a very small example. You obviously have to deliver results. In the end, in the groups you're working with, you have to be seen as, the de facto or one of the de facto leaders. So it's things like this, which if you can prove and if you can, demonstrate. And of course, if you can demonstrate that you have the skill sets and to do a bigger job, you will most likely get it. You won't be the only one, but
Rajiv, success brings in ego. And ego can be a derailer to your career. How do you keep ego at bay?
let's say if I was a huge industrialist or something, yeah, I could have my ego. That's fine. I'd still get away with it. But let's talk about the world which, we are a part of, which is the corporate world. Listen, you got an ego, you will rub people off the wrong way. You rub people off the wrong way, you're done. You will succeed for a short period. Beyond that, you will probably not. So it's best to recognize that there is no place for egos, and it's best to leave that ego aside. That does not mean that you don't disagree with people. That does not mean that you don't get upset once in a while or whatever. But do it in a reasonable, controlled manner, and just realize that the minute you're getting egoistic, it's not going to work out.
The world is changing very fast, and there's far more uncertainty and unpredictability. What should future leaders do to actually future proof their organizations and obviously ensure success for themselves?
One of the roles or one of the jobs of a CEO is to realize that or to recognize some of the things which could be making a difference to the external environment. What are some of the new things that are coming up? What are some of the new technologies? Usually, technology that makes the difference. What are some of the new how are customer trends changing? These kind of things. It's the role of a CEO to try and foresee this a few years in advance. If not a few years in advance, at least a year or two in advance. And then try and make changes to the organization. When I say changes to the organization, I don't mean destroying stuff, but building capabilities to handle situations of this sort. And that's the role of the CEO. A CEO will always have operations managers and these kind of things which are delivering the day-to-day results. That's actually the easy part. But if a CEO realizes that the role of a CEO is much beyond being a COO, that's when the CEO really gets successful over a longer period of time.
So we don't really have a Indian brand today, at least in the consumer space, that is global brand. You worked overseas. You've actually noticed you're a thinker and a thought leader who looks very closely at companies overseas. What are two, three things that you think that we need to do to have an Indian brand which is truly global?
Ronesh, you've touched upon a topic which is near and dear to my heart. And this is something which I consider as an unfulfilled part of my career at this stage. And I'm hoping to cover that over the next 10 or 12 years, through board positions or whatever. Look, it's a matter of personal concern to me that I cannot think of one global Indian consumer brand. If I look at other countries, I can think of a number of Chinese consumer brands.
Yeah.
I mean, you start with mobile phones, you start with, of all places, clothes, Shein.
Correct.
And then I read something about a couple of days back about how Chinese food chains are making big inroads into the United States. And when I
Yes.
say food chains, I mean include coffee chains.
Right.
And they're sort of giving Starbucks and the rest of these guys a run for their money.
Correct.
Korean, it's right there. Even in Singapore, you've got a few. I can't think of single Indian. And it's, on one hand, it's a matter of concern. Listen, we're a country with 1.4, 1.6 billion people. We're a country which is probably the top supplier of executives to the global world.
Correct.
And yet we cannot build a global Indian brand. I think there are about 3 or 4 things which sort of go into this. I think number one is complacence. I think we're a big domestic market and most Indian brands are happy, being in that domestic market and reaching the spoils. Right? It is helped by the fact that barriers to entry in India are difficult in the form of duties, etc., etc. I think that's one big thing which sort of stops them from even thinking outside. It's a little bit of complacence. It's helped by favorable government policies. And I think that's pretty much the main reason. I think Indian companies also lack skills on how to go about doing this. I don't think it's very difficult. If companies in China and Korea and some of the other ones can do it, why can't we?
So a company desiring, having its North Star to be a global brand, what are one or two things that you would say that they should do and work on?
I think you've got to pretty much figure out which part of the world you want to get into. Okay, getting into, let's say, other third world countries may be the right thing for some. There are some companies trying to get into Africa. There are companies which I think are capable of getting into the first world. Once you get the desire, at least go right ahead, understand your customer, and get into a proper strategy.
Mm.
I mean, let's start with Indian foods.
Mm.
Since we talked about Chinese food chains, etc., etc.
Mm.
I think one of the things you could do is you could probably start by, and let's take the United States. You got a large Indian diaspora.
Mm.
Maybe use that as your initial entry point,
Mm.
and then adapt your product to cater to a slightly wider market.
Mm.
If Kentucky Fried Chicken and Popeyes can make a big deal, I mean, what's
Mm.
wrong with our tandoori chicken?
Right.
I think everyone who's had tandoori chicken
Mm.
is all praises for it and compares it and when I say everyone, I mean at least all the foreigners I know
Right.
compare it very favorably to a couple of these brands I talked about. But you don't have any global offering on this, right? And this is just a very small example. But get in, buy a beachhead. Your beachhead could be the Indian diaspora. Your beachhead could be something else.
Mm.
Find a beachhead and then move on, build from there. Be prepared to understand what the other customer needs and change your offerings. So I'm told, back to this Chinese coffee chain example, I'm told that some of them are actually tweaking their products to cater to the US taste. And this is just an article I read yesterday. I mean, the
True.
same one we all read.
Right. Absolutely. So, one of the ways companies grow is to seek inorganic growth. I mean, sadly, the statistics are not much favorable. Over 70% of M&A fail globally. You've seen some of them in your career. What would be your general prescription? I mean, supposing if somebody wants to go inorganically, I mean, what are one or two things that they should watch out for or do or not do?
I think there are a lot of things. So let's touch upon this 70-75% failure. Here is what I would say. Number one, the acquired company and your company, there will be a cultural mismatch. Ideally, the best acquisitions are the ones where the cultures match.
Right.
But so yeah, many times, more often than not, you acquire companies where there is a huge cultural mismatch.
Mm.
I think you got to be in a position to try and not impose your culture on that company. In Preeti, it was a startup. You had lots of employees who did not even speak English. I don't speak Tamil. The fact is, I did communicate with them via a translator, via whatever. But one of the things I made pretty clear to them was saying that, listen, we want you to do your job. There are certain things from Philips which we will bring in, which will be good for you.
Mm.
But we're not going to take this whole approach and say, this is how we do things and bang, it's yours.
Mm.
So you got to be aware of the cultural context and you got to then sort of merge. It might take a little longer, but so be it. The other thing you don't do, at least initially, so every company has got a front end, every company's got a back end.
Mm.
I think one of the biggest things which companies tend to do is to merge everything together. I think what you should do is let the customer facing part of it be as is, if it's a good customer facing part. In Preeti's case, it was, and it still continues to be. Initially, you want to find synergies, you want to find efficiencies, etc. Do it at the back end. Do it at the factory end, the production end, the R&D end. Take something very simple. Preeti would buy aluminum. Preeti would buy copper. Philips would buy aluminum. Philips would buy copper. Yeah, you will get economies of scale in extra volume. Go right ahead, do that. There are certain factory practices which you bring into Preeti. Go right ahead, do all that at the back end. Let the front end be, because it's a good front end. You don't want to overwhelm your sales force. You don't want to overwhelm your customers with practices which are strange, because that destroys things.
Right.
And once your top line starts to go down because you've done the wrong things, you get into a spiral it's very difficult to get out of. You can do things to the front end later. Start with the back end, then move ahead.
What would be your prescription for aspiring global leaders?
Two things. Number one, you have to you have to understand and be capable of working in different cultural contexts. And I'll just elaborate on this a little later. The other thing, you have to be in a position to work with ambiguity.
Right.
There are times when you will get landed into ambiguous situations. You got to be in a position to make sense of those. It's not rocket science. I mean, it's not a skill which you're born with or not born with.
Mm.
It's something which you sort of can acquire. In some cases, if you are unable to handle ambiguity, yep, build up people in the team who can help you with that.
Mm. Mm.
But pretty clearly try and learn how to do that.
Mm.
And of course, the cultural context. So
Mm.
let's elaborate on this one.
Mm.
So I have lived in Singapore for 4 years. I've lived in China. I've lived in the United States. Of course, I'm Indian
Right.
here, and I have lived in Europe.
Yeah.
And if you see the way things, the cultural context, they're entirely different. Let's just take two ends of the scale. Let's take China. Let's take Europe.
Mm.
And in China, by the way, again, that's a place where a lot of the, Mandarin is the thing.
Yeah.
English is not necessarily that well known. Unlike Europe, where English is pretty much the, you can converse very nicely in English.
Right.
Right. So in China, in many cases, you have to be in a position to pick up cues.
Mm.
You might have a meeting, you might have, discussions. You'll find some people will be vocal, many people will be quiet.
Mm.
In Europe, entirely different.
Mm.
You have senior managers, etc., who regard, you got to be careful of not micromanaging them.
Mm.
Give suggestions,
Mm.
don't be directive, give suggestions, do the monitoring, give feedback as it is.
Right.
And be very candid with feedback. I think they can take candid feedback, unlike, let's say, some of the countries in Asia.
Yeah.
And go ahead, and that's how you sort of manage your teams.
Mm.
If you think that somebody is not doing a good job, tell them
Mm.
that, this is where, and be specific about it.
Mm.
So it's two entirely different cultural contexts.
Mm.
Be directive, tell people what to do versus, a situation where people are a little more independent. So you got to sort of manage around that. And everybody who aspires to be a global CEO has to understand that there are different cultural contexts and has to learn how to, manage within that, or lead within that is a better word, actually.
What do you think are the opportunities and, say, the threats in the world ahead that you would say business should keep in mind?
I think every day something or the other is throwing up opportunities. You can use that as an opportunity. You can also say, listen, this is a threat.
Mm.
I am a company which is offering certain services to people, and people may not sort of require the services because they would use tools like this on their own.
Mm.
Well, guess what?
Mm.
If you are a company offering services and you think that Gen AI is going to be a threat to you, you better figure out how to use that Gen AI to offer something even more to who your client would be,
Right.
and take it on from there. So there are lots of opportunities. You just got to be in a position to get around, grab those opportunities quicker than the next guy, and then figure out how to tailor your offering so that you add even more value than you're doing today.
Rajeev, you've done about 3 boards and about roughly 12 to 15 years on the board. And you watched them, and they've been quite diverse in nature, from boards in India to ones overseas. To make boards in India more effective, what would be your 2, 3 prescriptions?
Okay, great question, Ronesh. Let's differentiate between boards. So there would be two kinds of boards. There is one, a board the way we see it, right? So you're talking about board-run companies, multiple shareholders, and there is the board. And then there are certain multinationals where you've got one major shareholder. That shareholder could be a 90% shareholder. That shareholder could be a 75% shareholder. Actually, anything more than 75 is really majority. But you have one, which is right there. So let's differentiate between the two. Let's talk about multinationals and that. Look, in a board like that, it is the majority shareholders' view, or the overwhelming majority shareholders' view, which will have a very strong bearing. I think boards will have to make sure that they're just not rubber stampers of that view. Boards ideally should be adding value to that majority partner by bringing in, the local context. And then there is, of course, ensuring the whole compliance part of it. So while I have not been on, like you said, I've been on 3 boards, but I've seen many more from the outside. I think the boards where the board members were just rubber stampers of that decision, I don't think they've done a good job at all. But there are boards where the board members try to partner with the majority shareholder, the majority shareholder's representative, in this case, the managing director, to really add value and show that value are the ones which have succeeded. And I think that's something which you know they need to keep in mind. That also means that you're not hesitant to share your view, or not hesitant to tell the majority shareholder that there are things they could do better. Of course, it has to be
Right.
done properly. Okay, now let's talk about the other kind of board, which is, you're a board run company. There, I think the board's got a totally different responsibility because the buck pretty much ends with them. Again, partnering with the CEO without acting like a super CEO is something which is very important. And then compliance becomes a big thing. Sometimes I think board members, by virtue of their diverse nature, and a good board is really a diverse board, or a diverse board is a good board, let's put it that way, I think can pretty much bring in perspectives and see things into the future which could be of value to the company. So let's say I am a board member with a set of experiences and with a set of skill sets. I might see something in the environment, hence a few years down the road, which let's say the CEO may not be able to. And I can actually get in and add value by putting that on the table, and then, ensuring that the company has a strategy to ideally capitalize on that, or in some cases, ward that off as a threat if it is a threat. So it's things like this.
Do boards make or break a company?
Boards would make or break a company which is board run, most certainly. I think that breaking part is a little less prevalent when it comes to the one where there is a majority shareholder, let's say, owning about 90%. But because it's a limited company, you're required to have a board. One of the things I think it is obligatory on the board members is to ensure that the interests of the minority shareholders are also protected, and protected in a fair manner, especially in multinational shareholder
Yeah.
boards. That becomes very, very important.
If you were to construct a board today, keeping in mind the challenges of tomorrow, what are two, three things that you would keep in mind? And when you hire board members?
So I would, of course, check the ability and the experience of board members, and ideally they should be diverse. So there should be somebody who's had experience on the financial part of it. There is somebody who's had experience on, the customer part of it, the strategy part of it, and so on. So diversity, I think every board member I would pick would I would try and at least make sure that they are capable or well versed in dealing with ambiguity, because one of the key roles of the board is to take this ambiguity and try and make some sense out of it in a way that adds value to the management of that company.
Looking at challenges of future, should companies be chasing top line or bottom line?
It depends on the stage the company is in. First, a focus only on top line at the expense of a bottom line is not something which I endorse, although that is a really big thing in the startup world these days, but it is not something which I endorse. You may be very well capitalized as a company, and you may have certain opportunities which allow you to really grow, but try not to do it without not looking at the bottom line, hoping that the bottom line will come. So it depends on the stage of the company, but in the end, how exactly are you creating shareholder value? You're creating shareholder value by maximizing the bottom line, by maximizing the cash flow. You also need to keep in mind that only bottom line growth and the top line remaining stagnant is also a recipe for disaster, which, by the way, I have seen. So you got to balance this out.
One change in the startup ecosystem that you see happening in the coming 3 to 5 years?
Let's sort of break up the question into three things. Number one, let's talk about where the opportunity is. I think AI provides a huge opportunity. There is this constant debate on whether India should be building a Gen AI engine or not. I think we're past that stage now. The stuff's already been done, and it's way too expensive, really, to do it. But to build to use those engines to build your own, part of it. I think there are lots of opportunities over there. I'm sure some companies might even be considering building a full engine the way, let's say, ChatGPT or one of the other boys have done, or the way Chinese are doing. But I think there is enough opportunity in the AI space. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the healthcare space. We're still a country which is underserved. And there are enough things which a startup could do in terms of healthcare. And I'm not just talking about opening up a very large number of hospitals or whatever. There are various other ways you do it. It could be more accessible medical offerings. It could be more accessible, models for offering medical things. So this opportunity right there. I think fintech is something which is going to continue to remain. I think fintech has done well. It's going to continue to remain. My wish, though, is that our startups will get in and start to come up with some sort of technology which can then be made global, or which can be used to make a business a global business, and not just do a copycat of something which already exists somewhere and uh, reap the benefits of a domestic market. Back to that theme which I had talked about earlier. That's just my wish.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. We move a little track now and we do some rapid fire. One thing that brings a smile on Rajiv's face.
When I see members of my team happy with what they're doing,
One trait of yours that has got you here.
I think I have tried to be, and I still consider myself to be, extremely accessible to everyone in the organization, no matter who. The kitchen boy in my corporate days could actually walk in and have a chat with me, as could any employee at any level, and there was no, barriers to whatever. I do it.
One trait that future leaders should inculcate.
Ability to handle ambiguity. And this is a theme which sort of I have kept on during the course of this conversation. But that is a very, very important trait. Along with that is the ability to multitask.
One idea that India should be pursuing to get to the global stage.
There could be many ideas, Ronesh, but I just wish that it is in the realm of something which is to do with technology.
Biggest derailer for success.
That's a good question. I think there are many, many derailers for success. I think your ability to not understand the cultural context of your organization, or for that matter, your customer. If you can't do that, forget it.
Someone aspiring to get to the corporate world, one trait that they should inculcate.
Lots of traits: ability to work with people, ability to get across your ideas, without being abrasive, and ability to understand everyone's ideas, which in turn will then shape your own. It's things like this which are important. Again, I have done a lot of speeches to aspiring people in the corporate world, in the Indian Institutes of Management, and one underlying theme of what I've told them is, by the time you're done with your education, you will have the technical skills to succeed in the corporate world, but you need to remember that these are necessary skills. They are not sufficient skills. The sufficient skills are the ones which are to do with your ability to work with people. It's to do with the what we would loosely and vaguely call soft skills. So those are the ones which then become more important.
Most important trait of a board member.
The ability to partner with a CEO as opposed to becoming a super CEO, and the ability to ensure that the company's moral compass is never, never, never compromised.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Ronesh. It's been an absolute pleasure for me, and I have thoroughly enjoyed our interaction